My coworkers set me up on a blind date. It went well, but they are acting weird about it. I separated from my wife in early 2023 and divorced in early 2024. It was a pretty nasty breakup, and I moved to Chicago for a job to get away. I pretty much kept to myself at first, but was friendly with a couple of coworkers, John and Mark. They were younger than me, but it was easier to bond with them, as we were the only single guys in the office. We really hit it off this summer and hung out weekly. We went to the Pitchfork Festival together and really started to click. I really felt like I was coming out of my shell. A month ago, they were talking about their dating experiences and asked me about mine. I admitted I hadn't been on a date since my wife, and they both kind of shut up and looked awkward. The next night, we were out for drinks, and they mentioned that they wanted to set me up with a friend of theirs, Sarah. Mark showed me a picture of her on his phone, and I thought she was cute and said okay. They both looked at each other with a weird smirk on their faces, but agreed to set it up. I thought I knew what the look was about. She was a bigger girl, and I'm a bigger guy, so it made sense to them. But maybe they were unsure if they were being rude or not. I thought she was cute though, so it didn't bother me and let it slip out of my mind. We set it up for the next weekend, and I went. When I arrived at the restaurant, I spotted Sarah, waved, and walked over, but it was weird. Sarah acted like she didn't know me and was there meeting someone else. I pulled out my phone and told her Mark had set up the date and showed her the text from him with her picture. She looked at the phone for a second and looked like she was going to cry. I quickly apologized and told her I would leave if she was uncomfortable. She paused for a second and then assured me we should continue the date. I'll be honest, the first 20 minutes I almost got up and left. She looked miserable. I have no idea what was going on, but she looked like she had just been told she was the worst person alive. I don't know what made me do it. I guess because it was going so poorly, I just lost any nerves I had and was much more confident than I had been at the beginning of the date. Or maybe I just wanted to cheer her up. She was wearing a beautiful top that really showed off her cleavage, so at one point, when she was about to cry again, I just leaned in and said, "I think you are absolutely beautiful in that top. I'm sorry if I keep staring, but everything about this makes me happy to be here." She stared at me for a second, blushed, smiled, and actually became present for the date. We talked about her job, how she got to Chicago, how she had grown up with Mark and John. She mentioned she was trying to go through all the Criterion Collection films, and we bonded over a shared goal of seeing them all, and a shared annoyance that they add new films faster than we can watch them. After dinner, we walked around downtown to the park and somehow stayed out until after midnight. I know, because she was visibly upset about how to get home, so I offered my place that was within walking distance. Honestly, we didn't even have sex that night, we just talked and cuddled as we fell asleep. I told her about my divorce and how hurt I had been when I caught my wife, blah blah blah. I hadn't actually said it out loud, but Sarah just made me comfortable. We have been together ever since, and the relationship is better than it ever was with my wife. I know it's only been a month, but mark my words, I will marry this girl. But the reason I'm here is that Mark and John have been really weird about it. I asked Mark the next day why Sarah thought she was meeting someone else, and he just said that Sarah didn't want a picture and he must have described me poorly. But when I talked about Sarah that Monday, they both seemed off. They couldn't believe I had a good time, and John has been really annoyed. Whenever I bring her up, he leaves the room. They keep canceling on me too. Mostly because I want to bring Sarah. We'll have plans, and then when I say I want to bring her, they will cancel. I think they might be jealous that I'm in a relationship. Not sure. I think I may bring this up with Sarah, though, and just see what's going on. The vibes have been super weird. Yesterday, I came into our break room at work, and Mark and John were there. As soon as I sat down, John got up and excused himself, saying he had something he forgot to do. I looked at Mark and finally just asked him, "Why has John avoided me since my date with Sarah? What didn't you tell me?" Mark stuttered for a second, but then said it wasn't for him to say and told me to ask Sarah about it. I asked why he set me up if there was history there, and Mark just kind of went quiet, but then said, "Honestly, I didn't think he would act this way." I thought I was doing him a favor. Well, that confused me more than anything, so I texted Sarah and asked her to come over for dinner. She accepted, and I planned on discussing it that evening. When she arrived, we kissed, and the evening started rather pleasantly, but I was more nervous than our first date. I wasn't sure what this big secret was, but I knew it had the potential to do more than ruin our honeymoon period. It could destroy the relationship. She could see I was nervous and asked me what was going on. "What is your relationship with John and Mark?" I blurted it out and wished I could have had more tact. She looked at me for a minute, just like that first date when I thought she would cry. She started by telling me how she met Mark in high school, and they had always been friends, but nothing more. She deliberately didn't talk about John, and I caught on rather quickly. "Didn't John know Mark in high school too?" She was silent for a few moments and then whispered, "Yes." 2 tears ran down her cheek as she started talking about John. Her and John lived on the same street growing up and had been friends since before kindergarten. They would ride their bikes to the gas station, play games, catch lightning bugs, typical Midwest childhood stuff. They were each other's first kiss at 12, and Sarah said she had a crush on him since she could remember. John started acting different toward her as they got to middle school and then high school. John was attractive and played tennis and was outgoing, while Sarah was more reserved, stayed indoors, and was heavy. She was not attractive, no guys ever showed interest, and John would ignore her at school, but at home, he acted like they were best friends. This went on from 8th grade until sophomore year, when Sarah confessed her feelings one day, and John used it to have sex with her. He ignored her even at home after that. Days later, John was dating a more popular girl, and Sarah was left heartbroken. They dated for 6 months, and when they broke up, John came to her at home and tried to rekindle the relationship. Sarah wasn't having it at first, but eventually she did, and they went back to the normal of hanging out at home but ignoring her at school. He would get a girlfriend 3 months later and he ignored her, and this cycle went on all through high school and then continued into college when they both went to university in Champaign. At college, it went a little differently. He would call her up and she would come over and she would cook him dinner and they'd have sex. He did this when he was single or when he was in a relationship. She was never in a relationship, or in her mind, I guess she was in a relationship with him even if no one acknowledged it. She eventually got a boyfriend, but John didn't stop. He wanted to hang out. He would talk with her more in public. But as soon as she dumped him to date John, he flaked and went back to their old arrangement. This cycle then continued until she started seeing a therapist for her depression and realized just how terrible and toxic her relationship with John was, and while he treated her terribly, she had allowed it. So she decided to set boundaries with John and told him if they were going to continue seeing each other, it needed to be exclusive. This was a week before our date. When Mark contacted her, he implied that she would be meeting John, and it was at the dinner when she saw me that she realized that setting boundaries meant letting John go. When I complimented her, she realized what she had been missing out on for like 15 years and decided to actually, be on a date. John reached out a few days later with his normal shenanigans, but she blocked him. When she was done, I sat there stunned and she cried a lot. She kept apologizing and saying she knows how dumb she was, but she truly does like me and didn't know how to bring up the John stuff without scaring me away. I probably looked mad or something because she kept apologizing and asking me to say something. But all I could think about was how John always bragged about this girl he kind of controlled, and she would always give him a BJ, and she begged him to reciprocate, but he never would. I always thought John was an ass for that, but always looked past it. I knew it was her. So without saying a word, I got down under the table on my knees, unbuttoned her jeans, pulled her underwear down, and didn't stop until she came. She was panting hard and smiling. I just said, "Never apologize for those assholes again." And we went into the bedroom. Today, I'm requesting a transfer to another department. I have such mixed emotions. I would never have met Sarah without them, but Mark and John are two of the worst people on the planet, and I hope they stay single forever. They deserve no one.